Okay, let's get started. I might fly through these and leave a little bit of time at the end, but we'll see how we go with hopefully comments. Okay, so to set the scene for today, a little story, right? So back long ago, not so long ago actually, when people first began flying airplanes, it was only a matter of time before one of them was going to crash, not because the aircraft malfunctioned, but because a human malfunctioned. And this really came to everyone's attention in the 70s and 80s, when there were a few really catastrophic, nasty crashes that, again, nobody could blame on the aircraft. So that one on your far left might be a computer simulation of Tenerife, which is the worst air accident in history. 583 people died when two planes crashed into each other on a runway because of bad communication in fog. Yep. The one in the middle is from Florida. This one's really cool. The crew actually got distracted by a little light bulb that was burnt out. You ever get a warning light in your car? It was the equivalent of that in the airplane. Well, they got so distracted trying to fix a little light bulb that had no functional issue, that they missed the fact that they had disengaged the autopilot. And the next time they realized what was going on, they were 10 seconds away from impacting the ground in the Everglades. The one on your far right is from England, when 47 people died because one engine burst into flames. So the crew shut down the other engine, obviously by mistake. So fortunately for aviation and the rest of the world, this occurred in a way that made it really obvious that this was a human issue as opposed to an aircraft issue. Because perfectly competent humans had been malfunctioning since the dawn of time, and they still do today. And actually, in about 1959, the US Army realized that there were these elusive job-related skills involving people that they referred to as soft skills that they started looking into in 59, but had started calling them soft skills by 72. So I've got a few of my favorite pictures up here for your entertainment. Got some really bright characters in a pool with who it looks like they've used some sandals to support an electric plug. Yep, very nice, very nice. That's gonna last. You've got some guy that's climbed up on his rather flexible friend to get a lift, and then another guy working on some electrics with his feet in a puddle. So I guarantee you, we all do things, hopefully not this catastrophically stupid, but dumb enough on a daily basis. And so this really started to come to the attention of industries where safety was incredibly important. Not that long ago, really, 70s and 80s. I was alive. I don't know how many other people were, but anyway. So in their efforts to prevent these similar catastrophic human type accidents from happening, aviation psychologists decided to really delve into what in the world is causing these pilots to malfunction. They wanted to know, how did they make decisions? How did they work together? How did they communicate? And they just decided to call these things non-technical skills. Now you see them all over the place. There's a focus on non-technical skills in aviation, in maritime, in health. Quite a few industries, particularly the ones that are safety critical, have been paying attention to this for at least a few decades now. Do we have any, I see little blinking things. Patty, do we have any comments? You're on mute.
Sorry, no, we're all right. So there's just a couple of comments rather than questions, yeah.
Okay. Right, but this is why you are here today, right? So you're learning about non-technical skills, these elusive things that we're not quite sure what to call them. So in true academic fashion, right, let's look at what the Oxford English Dictionary thinks about it. Something that's technical, right? So a technical skill it's saying that you're skilled. you have mastery of a particular art or a subject. Yeah, you clearly had to go to some length to become competent. Whereas non-technical is specifically referred to as not relating to or involving science or technology. So we don't get it, and therefore clearly science is not involved here, and it doesn't require any sort of specialized knowledge. So either you got it or you don't, is what they think. I have a massive issue with the word non-technical. Number one, why are they defined as what they're not? It makes them sound very second class in terms of a skill that one might want, which is particularly defective if you look at what industries are we using these in? Let's take aviation. I don't know how many pilots you know, but they're not the type of people that generally want to think that they're working on the least cool skills available to work on. They're interested in doing the flashy stuff. So we didn't give ourselves any advantages in telling them, from now on, sky gods, you're going to be learning about these non-technical skills. Didn't go over that well for a while. Anyhow, as behavioral scientists, we should be taking offense to that, because just because you don't know how to define it, just because you aren't quite sure how to teach it or where this special sauce is coming from, doesn't mean we can't use science to understand it and to, more importantly, teach it. So what the heck are they anyway? Depending on where you're looking, you're going to get an ever so slightly different definition. But I like to group them into sort of two categories. I feel like that's probably unnecessary to do in anyway, because it's all just things you do. So we could call them all behavior. But for the sake of the rest of the world that don't think that way, I think probably two categories is an okay way to go. So one is cognitive, right? It's the stuff you do. And the other one is interpersonal. It's the stuff you do with other people. I've got the RSSB's definition up here. So there's social, cognitive, and personal skills. And here's the important bit, that enhance the way you or staff carry out technical skills, tasks, and procedures. So really, they're like the little flavor crystals for what you do anyway, for your technical skills, right? Just makes it a little bit better. Now, you know, we know what happens if a pilot doesn't have very good non-technical skills. They might crash something into the Everglades or shut off the wrong engine. But actually, I would suggest these skills are incredibly life-changing is an understatement for someone who works with other humans, especially if your job is to have an influence on their behavior. So we're going to do this in reverse fashion today. Instead of telling you what you need to do, I'm going to tell you what you could do to go terribly wrong as a start, and then we'll talk about why that might happen. So I don't know how many people work with others who have really rubbish task management skills, but it's tough. It is really tough if you work with somebody who says, I will have it to you on Friday. I absolutely will. Friday comes and goes. You've got 7 people on the phone that were expecting X on Friday. And all you've got to say is, well, they did say it was going to be done. So as a behavior support practitioner, who's relying on you to hit your deadlines? It's something we all struggle with, task management, but there are lots of ways to do it better. So when we say that, what we mean, and this is not an exhaustive list of what people are referring to, but just as a start, do you adhere to deadlines? Do you know how to schedule your time in a way that works? So, you know, hopefully nobody here works in an organization where you're not allowed to say, I can't get it to you tomorrow. Hopefully we're all able to set realistic expectations for other people to have of us. If not, you know, you're a behavior analyst. Let's tackle it. That's someone else's behavior. You're there now to modify. Anyhow, so effective scheduling. I'm notoriously terrible at this. And here's how I know. Because I do this really neurotic to-do list process where I write down everything I need to do. And then I've got a Monday to Sunday calendar. And I say, okay, this I shall do on Monday. This I shall do on Tuesday. This I shall do on Wednesday. And what I repeatedly notice is on Wednesday, I'm doing Monday's task. But I have that feedback frequently enough to where I'm getting quite a bit better at it. And I know, for example, putting a PowerPoint together is something that really should only take half a day. No, it will take me the equivalent of a day and a half because of distractions, because I have another bright idea, because of who knows what. But yeah, so figuring out how much time things take you, prioritizing tasks. Something else I'm personally terrible at is I do what I want to do first. And I save the nasty bits for later. Right now, something I'm doing is reviewing courseware for a pilot training course. And it is, it's on the science of learning. So you've got a bunch of guys who are pilots who've put together a course on the science of learning, and they want me to tell them what's good about it and what's not so good. It's torturous, and it has slipped down my to-do list for days. But now it's prioritized. Even though I have other stuff I'd rather do, it's got to happen this week. Otherwise, I'm going to dread it forever. So arriving to meetings on time, very important. Some people will get very bent out of shape and take it personal if you're not. So in terms of how to burn a bridge with someone, that's a good one. Working efficiently without excessive prompting, so important. Although personally, I appreciate a good prompt. Right, okay. So step 2, if you're interested in burning a bridge, make sure that when you write, it's in maybe an inappropriate tone, nobody understands what the heck you're saying, and maybe make it way too long or way too short for what it should have been. I really enjoy this Dilbert cartoon I found, so I figured I'd put it up here. Why haven't you answered my email? Well, your message was so poorly written, I didn't understand it, and I didn't dare to start a dialogue. I've got emails like this before. Maybe I should have a talk with your boss. Maybe you should email him. Yeah. And we all know about how important good grammar is. Yeah. What I can tell you for sure is when I submit reports that are going to be read by people that are at levels high, so high that I can't even see them through the clouds, they really are looking at it for how bright I sound. It's kind of an inconvenient truth, but it is the truth. So you're going to get your message across a lot better if when they read it, they think you know what you're talking about. And unfortunately, grammar and knowledge are conflated by humans all the time. So you could be saying something that is the absolute truth, but if you do it in a way that has terrible grammar, unfortunately, some people may think you know less about what you're talking about. So written communication skills are super key, super key. You do need the good spelling and grammar. You need an appropriate tone. I can tell you at some level on the corporate ladder, your smiley faces are gone. You don't get to use them at some stage. And if you do, I know. And if you do, people are gonna probably give you a little bit of flack about it, which is, look, you be you. I choose to still use smiley faces. But I know some people are looking at them and making fun of me. Anyway, so right, just understand that when you do write, especially in a professional way, be that on social media or in an official report, it does reflect on you and it does reflect on your company. So this is a thing that is important to pay attention to. It's got to be understandable as well. We all know this really well as people who put together plans for people to modify their behavior and other people's. If you write something that makes perfect sense to you, but makes no sense to them, you might as well not have written it in the first place.
And Leah, if I could just, for some folks, they have challenges with that aspect of the work, perhaps because of dyslexia or something like that. And I think probably, I check with yourself, but get help, get someone that you trust to check over your work for you, because like you say, it's sometimes just a tiny bit of punctuation makes a sentence read completely differently. So sometimes when I work with people, I don't want to go through like a pedant correcting everything, but if I see there's any challenges with the message that is going to be delivered, then sometimes you can help people by so don't be worried, this is not a spelling test, it's not punctuation, but if you struggle with that, get help from somebody you trust, because it will enhance what you're doing.
Yeah, no, the message I think, which is really key, is know thyself. Yeah, so I can tell you right now, what I'm really good at is stuff like spelling and grammar. Do you know what I'm not good at? Tone. Because it's my habit of saying, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this could be better, and this could. So before I send anything to anyone, it goes through the filter of my business partner, who routinely responds by saying, oh, you're going to want to pink that up a little bit, fluff it up. That's pretty nasty what you've done here. So yeah, know yourself. There are no contributions that are less important than others, but know which ones are yours and get the other ones other places. And help, especially if you're if you're a supervisor, help to make sure that the people that you have an influence on understand that whatever it is that they're good at is their contribution, and that there is only good things to come from being honest with yourself and other people about what you're good at and what you need them to be good at. Especially if you're in a position to hire somebody, don't hire someone that's good at exactly the same stuff you are. What good is that? Right. Did you want to say something, Patty?
I was just going to say it's, because I know you like the participation, but I think it's the Einstein quote, isn't it? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life believing it's stupid. And I think I've seen people that are super talented, but perhaps are dyslexic and they can't communicate their work very well. My job is to kind of help them with that aspect so they can shine at the bits they're good at in some ways, right?
Yeah, and not that we're specifically talking about dyslexia, but I know dyslexia has two sides in my very biased opinion. And the other one is, to overgeneralize, people with dyslexia tend to be brilliant with people. They tend to be brilliant with reading people. So yeah, discover what your strengths are, because there are some that I think are darn near superpowers. Anyway, so the next one, throw your hands in the air like you just don't know how to solve a problem. This is something that it's really easy to fall into this trap, right? But why won't they just do it? Well, it's your job to figure it out. Yeah, so problems are, I know this sounds really silly, but I'm completely serious when I'm buying my own when I say it. Problems are opportunities. They're opportunities for you to have insight into why it's a problem. It's an opportunity to grow as a practitioner as you learn to solve the problem. It's an opportunity to engage with other people so that they can help you solve the problem. Problems are good things to have. And problem solving skills are even better things to have than problems. I think, what people probably need to understand is lots of things are going to throw issues your way. One thing we're all going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives for sure is new technology. We're all very familiar with Zoom now. That was a problem we had to solve. My issues with solving problems around figuring out Microsoft Teams are still haunting me. But knowing how to get to solve even little skills, like I know teaching my teenagers to look things up when they don't know the answer, or recognizing when they don't know the answer and that the information is available. These are skills that you can't take for granted. Nobody comes into the world with a really good understanding of how one can view a problem, how you can look at the structure of a problem and how that might be best solved in a similar way to a different problem with the same structure. There's lots of science in this stuff. It might not be coming out of our field, but it is cool. It is good science, and it's worth looking into this stuff. So yeah, things we already know being scientists. Take time for research and analysis. Don't over-rely on your previously used solutions. You know, just because you've got a kiddo doing the same thing that some kiddo you had in the past did does not mean that the same thing will work. Yeah. And it might not even be because the kid isn't exactly the same. It might be that they have a different, you know, environment, different caregivers. You've got to, every problem is a fresh new problem. And resilience is huge. So being able to bounce back when you've had a problem and when you've had to deal with it, and then starting the next one with the same enthusiasm, that's a skill all in itself. Right. Other ways to burn a bridge: dysfunctionally communicate. And I've pulled together some of my personally favorite terms that some of us might use from time to time. If you look at them all together, and then I told you, what kind of person, what kind of profession uses these terms? What does it make you think of? Does it make you think of a helping profession? I'm not sure it does. Go ahead, Pat. I know you have to.
It was one of the papers Joe Colson asked me to read a while back. And yeah, there was a line in it that I used in a previous presentation that said, in some circumstances, behaviour analysts are looked at akin to Attila the Hun because of our use of language. Attila the Hun. We'd better get on and stop using that language quickly.
It really does make you think. I mean, look at the words, just really look at them with fresh eyes. It's bad. It's not someone that's going to come into my home and understand me and understand my, you know, child or my culture. That's not that person. And I'm not saying that that is the most logical conclusion, but I am saying it is the most frequent conclusion. So functionally, is it working? Yes or no? I'll let you decide for yourself. Right. So now these are a different variety of communication skills, right? What you say and how you say it. There's a writing tone, right? Lots of exclamation points mean you're really excited or really angry. I don't know. It's a strong response. But that's reflected in the way that you speak as well. So if you are having a bad day, if you're really nervous, then your tone might sound like this, even and you might not be aware of it. So know what you're bringing to the table that day and make sure that you have carefully selected the tone you want for that person at that time. And we can judge this the way we judge every other intervention. Are you being functionally effective? Did you get your message across? Because if you've asked somebody to do a certain thing a certain way, and you come back and they haven't done it, even as behavior analysts, our first thought is, that's a them problem. I wonder why they didn't do it. Maybe they had a bad week. Maybe very rarely do we think, I wonder if I didn't communicate that quite the way I intended. But I would suggest that should be your first thought, because it should be a thought at some time, and you might as well get it out of the way first, because it is frequently where things went wrong. Being able to speak in public is not a skill everyone has to have, and I hear that people are more afraid of public speaking than death itself. Yep, I think somebody did a study and it ranked higher than death. So look it up. I might be citing something that's incorrect, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that. And I would believe it too, because, you know, it doesn't matter what industry conference you go to. There's a certain kind of feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when you see the speaker getting really nervous and you're like, oh, and you can't help but empathize for them. And you just wish you could say, it's okay, take a breath. But yeah, so knowing how to speak in public is not something everyone has to do. But if you have to do it, that is a whole skill all in itself. And if you get out of practice, I am here to tell you, it gets more difficult. Yeah. Things like speaking in meetings, critically important. I don't know who's been in a meeting where you've got that one person that just cannot help but interrupt people. Yeah, interrupting is the worst ever. It is such an unfortunate thing to do in a meeting. I was on a call the other day, and after the call, we were just lamenting. There was someone on that call that just needed to get her point across so badly that she kept interrupting not just anyone, but sort of the boss's 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 boss who happened to be on the call in a way that was really pushy and confrontational, and you're watching dying inside. And I'm sure she had no idea that that was happening. So, you know, this is something you've got to pay attention to. You've got to get the feedback. You have to know how you sound. I'm sure Patty will laugh at this, but he knows that here, the idea of listening to a recording of myself personally, that would rank higher than death for me. Terrible, terrible, but you have to do it if you want to know how you can improve. So yeah, then we go, of course you need to eliminate sort of that complicated jargon, watch your body language. I was on a Zoom call a couple weeks ago where everyone's facing their screen, and then you have someone who's just over here like this for the whole call. Why? Do you know, if it's a thing that you need to do, and that's completely fine. If you really struggle to maybe pay attention while you're looking at someone else's face, awesome. Tell us that you know you're not watching the video. Yeah. Hopefully you work in an environment where it's acceptable to say that. But being on a Zoom call and staring at the side of someone's face doesn't look like they're very engaged and interested in what everyone else is saying. So watch your body language, make sure you appear to be engaged and interested. Yep.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it might be, it's not quite a question, but one of our attendees has said that they find it really difficult to read others, to know when to speak online. It's interesting. I see that. I had a funny experience, got some friends together for a conspiracy conversation, just to do something different last Friday. I'm not drinking in January. They all were. Which adds a different dimension to it. But you know what? I found myself, it was really interesting. I'm used to doing Zoom with professionals. There are a lot more skills around knowing when to take your turn and stop. It was 45 minutes of chaos. It was the hardest meeting I'd chaired for the whole month, I think. So I just wondered if you had any kind of, to Sam's point around kind of any tips in terms of picking how to address some of that kind of stuff, maybe.
Yeah, quite frankly, I struggle with it too. Especially when you're on a call with a lot of people who are accustomed to being in charge. That's rough. It really is. Look, there are lots of things to try, and what's going to work is going to be unique to you and the group that you're dealing with. But some things are, you know, come up with the ground rules at the beginning of the meeting. Decide if you're going to mute and raise hands. Decide if you're going to shout out. And what's going to work best is going to depend on the group of people. So for me, I like it when people shout out. It doesn't bother me. I enjoy the back and forth. My brain is just fine going like this. In fact, it's not fine going like this. But that is quite, you know, that's the opposite of more people. So most people do get really off their game if somebody interrupts. So you need to know who you're dealing with. And we all know people are not generally very accurate at self-reporting, so you're going to have to pay attention to their behavior. So if somebody interrupts them and they've just completely lost their train of thought, don't interrupt them, even if they told you that they want you to interrupt them. So yeah, I think that unfortunately the best advice I've got for you, having not cracked the code on it myself, is it's hard. Zoom cognitive fatigue is a real thing. And you do miss a lot of the cues that you wouldn't miss if you could see a little bit more of them. So if I was sort of back here and I was talking like this, and then I put my hands down, I'm probably done, and it's probably a good time to pop in. But you can't see that, you know, actually, I don't know if you can right now, but for the most part, you're missing you're missing all that other body language, so it makes it a real challenge. So our next one is put the I in team, right? Make it about you. Make sure that you know, you're putting forth this vision of disinterest in other team members or other professions, that will surely burn bridges. And, you know, I know other fields look at us and wonder what in the world we're missing, because it's a thing we're kind of famous for, unfortunately. Teamwork is critical. Teamwork is critical. I don't know how everybody here was raised in academia, but I know the way that I was raised was truthfully to believe that behavior analysts know everything. They can do everything, and they do it better than everyone else. And I don't know how much thought went into that messaging. But what I do know is the message is received by lots of people in this profession, and quite to their detriment, to the detriment of their development, to the detriment of their interactions with others, more importantly, to the detriment of the people we're meant to help. We've got to be very sure we're sending this message, in my humble opinion, of you don't know it all. You can't. What kind of pressure is that? That's too much pressure to put on any one person. It's certainly too much pressure to put on a field. There will always be another field that does what you're doing, has done what you're doing, has different ways of explaining it. You know, if you work on MDTs, if this is something that you do as a matter of practice, and I hope you do, you've really got to figure out, what does an SLT know how to do that you don't know how to do? What does the OT in the room specialize in? What are they good at? What do they prefer to do? You know, so what's unique to that person and to that field? You'll have to do this, I hope, for the rest of your career. You'll have to work with other people. Even if you're working in a lab, you're going to have to apply for, you know, grants or for funding. You will have to interact with people outside of your field, and you'll need to know how to do that in a way that's effective. It is about being flexible in your approach. Yeah, so I know you want to do it this way, but actually if the team doesn't support it, it's not even an option. So knowing other ways to get the same results, still using science, treating other people with respect. Pat, how am I doing on time? One minute. I feel like I've thrown you through a loop, Patty.
I've got so many different things open on my screen. Okay. Going. Yeah, we're doing good. You've got about 6-7 minutes left, Leah.
Perfection. Okay.
No, I've gone into lunch. I'm sure we've got a couple of minutes wiggle room there.
Okay. Awesome. I'm on target. Imagine that. That's a shock. So just in the event that you're still not sold, right? Wouldn't you know, Google of all companies have started paying attention to this, because you might not know that their hiring strategy for years and years was, if you're not coming out of sort of MIT, you know, the tip top engineering science type fields, they weren't interested. They didn't even pay attention to your resume. So they decided to look into whether or not that made sense. So through Project Oxygen, they rated sort of what were the important characteristics of those successful individuals. And oddly enough, the top 7 had nothing to do with their technical skills. 7 of their top skills were all soft skills, STEM expertise. So how much of a badass you were in your own field, dead last in terms of how, dead last in terms of how successful you were. They did the same thing in, similar thing in Project Aristotle. So they found that their most successful teams were not their A teams. Actually, their B teams, can you believe they called them A and B teams, by the way? How awful. But their B teams, which were people with a range of skills, especially soft skills, they found that those teams were more psychologically safe. So people in those teams were okay with failing, were okay with admitting that something didn't work, were okay with admitting they didn't know something. And not surprisingly, they came up with the coolest stuff. So they were more productive. They came up with the most impressive sort of new innovative ideas. And it's because they specialized in soft skills, which, you know, you would hope that if Project Oxygen turned out the way it did, Aristotle would turn out the way it did. But yeah, sure enough. So just in case you're still not sold, because I am here today to sell you on these skills. We know you're an expert in your field. Yeah, there are ways to tell if you're technically competent, but your career success, quite frankly, depends on your ability to people. You know, until that is something that is viewed as important to the individuals and the organizations in our field, we're missing a trick. We're missing an opportunity to be a lot more impactful. Your client success depends on it massively. You cannot get treatment fidelity and therefore program success if people are actively trying to undo your plans because of the way that you've talked to them in the past. Our field success depends on it. People are not listening to you know, they don't want to know how much you know. They want to know what you know that can make their life easier. And if you can communicate that to them, then they're willing to listen. So, and then even if you're talking about going to another field, even if you're like, forget this behavior stuff, it's too hard, you're still going to need them for the transition. And finally, the robot apocalypse, the robot apocalypse is coming. So I love this picture. Look, the influence of technology is everywhere, and yeah, it might hit manufacturing first, but I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, one day your sort of call up a doc and get a prescription over the phone becomes call up a robot and give them your prescription. And it's kind of only a matter of time between you're going to have to, you know, now and when you have to deal more with technology. What that means and what we've seen in other fields. So healthcare, for example, 20 years ago, we're selecting for technical skills. They select second for technical skills now. In healthcare, they select first for soft skills. And they've been at that for 20 years. Aviation's just now figuring it out. It's going to be a minute before we catch up. But it's in the works. Competency frameworks have been modified. Even if you want to be a pilot, you're going to be judged on your non-technical skills. So I'm going to speed through these because I don't have much time, but how do you learn about this stuff? You know how to learn about this stuff, right? Look it up, ask for the feedback, and do the work. You're uniquely qualified to know how to self-manage your own behavior. How cool is that? They are trickier to learn than technical skills, by the way, because they don't work the way they're envisioned every time. So it's something that you're going to have to do quite intentionally. But here you go. To end it up, the take-home message here is, please help our field survive the robot apocalypse and work on your non-technical skills. They will pay you untold dividends. Thank you very much.